Hello and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast. I am Chris Austin.
And I'm Ian Hawks.
And joining us today, we have a special guest. Joining us is cinematographer Mitchell Perrin. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Happy to be here.
So, Mitch and Ian, you two know each other, don't you? Because you both worked together recently, am I right?
Yeah, well, we have a long history together. Mitch and I were in like first grade together growing up, and have been friends for years and years. And then actually took like some media classes. Like we were in like a film club, kind of a media club in middle school and a little bit through high school. But Mitch was always, frankly, more interested in it and better at it than I was. And then I was kind of, doing like some writing stuff and some animation stuff, and we kind of split paths in college. And but then through kind of this amazing fortuitous thing, I moved back to Maine, where we both grew up, and was pulling together this movie. And I had a mutual friend who said, well, you should maybe talk to Mitch and see if Mitch wants to shoot it, because Mitch is a DP now. And I got really nervous because I was afraid I was going to go look at Mitch's work, because I like him a lot as a person, and his work was going to be bad, and then I was going to have to not hire him on stuff. And then I went and looked at his work, and I was like, oh, damn, like, it's incredible. It's really, really good. And so Mitch and I were able to get in touch, and then, we just shot a short film together back in November. It's called Ash Woman. It's a proof of concept for a feature that we're hoping to pull together in the next year or two, and it was a lovely, lovely experience. So that's kind of the very brief of Mitch and I's friendship and how we recently got reconnected.
I think you might be doing me some serious favors and maybe being a little extravagant with the compliments, but all the backstory is true for sure. We can attest to that. I mean, we did indeed meet each other quite many years ago, and I think over the years kind of bounced creatively off each other in interesting ways. We sang together, which I think is a little known fact
we were
of my
in
current
barbershop
life, is that
quartet
like we were
for 4 years, which was pretty fun.
Oh, that's excellent.
we won't trouble you with that.
You won't serenade us.
Maybe we should feel free to get the scissors out on this episode if you want to just leave that bit out for Ian's sake.
I'm curious to know, Mitch, like, because there is actually, and it's funny that we have even actually never really talked about this in our actual friendship, but so in that time between like school and us kind of reconnecting just a couple years ago, I mean, it's a good chunk of time, and you worked on a lot of stuff. So I'm just kind of curious to know like what your kind of story was from kind of college and up through a lot of kind of the professional work that you kind of got into after that.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to start, because it's important for me to revisit it as well. I went to college in Montana for a bit for what I thought would be a film program. It turned out to be less than I expected of that. I don't want to, put any names out there, but I ended up going back to Maine for a bit and got really involved with sort of stage production, and realized that, like I do want to be doing things with my hands and working in physical forms, and like, I like the sides of art that intersect with the trades a lot. So I went to North Carolina to a great conservatory called UNC School of the Arts, was there for an additional 4 years, and then moved to New York to, I guess, be in a film hub, but also be in a film hub that was close to New England. Because for me, it's like, I grew up in New England, and I want to be close to the things that feel like home to me. I think that's an important part of what I do as an artist. And just kind of hit the ground running. I started working in the lighting department, running cable and gutters in New York City and powering big lights, which is about as glamorous as it sounds like. And put my head down and just kind of did that for, the better part of, all told, 5 to 6 years, like just working up through the lighting department, starting rigging, generators and cable before production would arrive. And then I would, slowly move up into being sort of an on-set lighting technician, and eventually a best boy, or best person, assistant chief lighting technician is sort of what we're calling it on the West Coast now. But, you know, in any case, it's a ubiquitous role. Managing the lighting department for the gaffer, and, you know, eventually moved up to second unit gaffing, in sort of the studio world, you know, major motion picture stuff with a great gaffer called Nina Kuhn, and a great rigging gaffer / best boy herself, Meg Schrock, in New York. And they brought me along to some really interesting stuff. I mean, we did, what did we start on? A really cool film called Tiger Tail, which is kind of a, you know, Asian American story about, you know, multi-generational families moving to New York, and it's interesting. Check it out. It's not relevant to the story so much, but I think it was.
Feature?
It's a feature. I think it was like what we would call a tier feature in New York. You know, still a studio-backed movie, but
it's
not
with
necessarily
it's
blockbuster.
with Netflix. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it right now online.
Yeah, it's
cool.
Netflix film.
Cool.
So, you know, like, I think that was one of the more notable things. Is like that was one of the first ones where I was doing more best boying. But yeah, we did all sorts of movies for 5-6 years, sort of culminating in some TV stuff that was quite a bit bigger. We did a season of Jack Ryan with Amazon, and then we did Mayor of Easttown, which is, I think, maybe the last sort of entry of note in my career in the lighting department. And that was, you know, the better part of 2 years by the time the pandemic was said and done, of being in Philadelphia, managing a 30-person crew, and just in the lighting department alone. And, you know, gaffing second unit, besting main unit. And I think that was one of the more important, I guess, pieces of experiences for me as a cinematographer, in terms of being able to know that in the future I can scale. So being able to work with producers on a big long form project like that, and like knowing sort of how to live in this almost like circus style lifestyle on the road, where the trucks pull up every morning and that's more of a home than your bed at night, and you're carrying on and you're on this road show. So that's, you know, I guess that's a primer of those years without a lot of weight or context. But I think that's sort of my backstory. Is I moved up through the lighting department, and then following that show, I kind of jumped into shooting full time. And I'd been shooting shorts, and, you know, I'd done, you know, maybe 30 to 50 commercials over the course of those 5 years in New York as a DP.
Oh, wow.
I'd done, you know, 100 or 200 as a gaffer. And so, you know, between this narrative work, I was doing a lot of commercial work. So I stuck my neck out and dipped my toe into, you know, the world of being a commercial director of photography, cinematographer. And that just kind of stuck. So it's, you know, now it's been some years have gone on, and, you know, through the connections I built over the, you know, 5 or so years of gaffing and lighting at a high level, have gotten the opportunity to shoot 3 features. You know, none of them are out at this time. They're all still in post, and they're still sort of looking for buyers, etc. But I think that there are 3 very different films. One is a coming of age story. One is a very abstract, I think some people who worked on it are calling it a horror film. I think it's more of an abstract work of art, with some horror elements to it. And then currently we're in production on a fantastic New York story that's called Naked in the Park. And without revealing too much about it, it's just this beautiful film about, you know, midlife Iranian man living in New York City who doesn't really fit into any group. And it's very sort of non-actor, a lot more improvised, a lot more sort of organic film workflow. And we're shooting on 16, and it's like, it's been a really sort of huge, probably the largest departure from that Mayor of Easttown 200 person, you know, organism that's planned and plotted months in advance, and we just execute on the day, and to this thing where it's like, I got a truck with 3 of my friends on it, some lights, and we go and we watch a rehearsal, we see what happens, and we make it up. You know, the script is the only thing we serve, and then everything else is like completely how does the story advance? What are our goals for the day, having just watched the rehearsal, for the first time in the morning. So that's a primer. I know we only have, a short limited time, so I think that's probably enough or too much backstory.
No, honestly, it's a lot. It's amazing. And I assume that how invaluable has that experience been for you by working in all facets? So shorts, commercials, television, features. I assume, has there ever been a jarring experience where you've gone, okay, the pacing of this, I'm not used to this. Going from one form of medium to another.
I think in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. There's been enough variation that I can kind of know at this point. Early on, absolutely. But now at this point, it's really cool to have a wealth of sort of ponds I've dabbled in and know kind of how the day is going to go. And it informs decision making and planning in a way that I think is really helpful. But I also think that, all of that experience has taught me just as much what I don't want to do as much as what I do want to do. And I think that even in the commercial, even in the music video, it's like, how do we make people feel something? And that's the through line. That's the thread that connects all those different mediums, is like, at the end of the day, it's a medium that's about emotion. And for me, it's been really interesting to tie that across all formats, to go from a massive, massive production. And we got these, 18Ks on cranes outside the window. And at the end of the day, we just are still waiting for that beat in the script where they push in to evoke a tear from the audience, because we spent, the last hour stretching them to the absolute, end of their tension, and they don't know why they cried at that moment, but it's just that little dolly push. And I think whether that's me on, my camera pushing in a little bit, or a techno crane coming through the window, like, if you notice the camera, we haven't done our job. So it all comes down to what's happening in that room, and creating, I think Bradford Young, who's a DP I look up to a lot, said, like, creating a blanket around that character, and letting the crew sort of create a warm space for them to work in. It all comes down to that thing that's happening in the room. So the rest of it is, universal. It's really like what's happening between the three people in the room in this tiny corner office set that makes us feel something. And it's been really exciting to go from big to small and be able to still feel that and realize that's what I care about more than other things.
Because fundamentally, it's all in service of the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's like, it's the script. I think there's so many examples of times in a movie when I'll look to somebody and say, cool shot. And I think that's when we fail, right? Like, I don't want to, right? Like, as a DP, it's a little bit of a disservice to the innovation of the craft, but like, I don't want either of you to say, I loved that shot. Like, I loved that scene is maybe more important. And I don't think that.
Fascinating.
I think that at the end of the day, right, we're just trying to we're evoking a feeling. No one thing should pull the viewer out of it. So that's universal. That's true in commercials. That's true in music videos. It's like in a music video, everybody can be hanging upside down from the ceiling, but they shouldn't say, oh, the camera did this or the camera did that. It's like the overall feeling of the cool thing should be the focus of the audience. So I think that's the thread that connects everything together and makes what we do so special.
Yeah.
It's so interesting too, though, right? Because, so just to, like, on that point as well, because a DP's relationship on set, the closest relationship you have is with the director, right? And when you think about certain directors, I mean, we're talking big, splashy, showy directors, like Tarantino, for instance. I'll just pull out.
Yeah.
He's a director who he's my favorite director, but he's who I watch and I go, look at that fucking shot. Look at that shot. Look at that shot. And so let's say you, Mitch, you're working with Tarantino. Your feel is to, well, I don't really want to, in terms of the way the camera is moving, it's not something that you necessarily want to be drawn to as the audience. Is that, if you're working for Tarantino, how do you wrestle with that sort of sensibility within yourself of, well, no, I'm just serving the scene, as opposed to, because people are going to turn to you and go, that was a fucking cool shot, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so I think here's the really fun part of this, right? Is it's not, oh, we can't be flashy. It's about in the opening of the film or in the first few moments, there's always a warm-up period, right? We're watching a film, we haven't gotten sucked in yet. Nobody is at second one of a film going, I'm completely taking it, I'm completely absorbed in this environment. In that really critical window, we have to build a contract with our audience. And that's to do whatever language we want to do. We can animate the whole thing. We can, whatever. It can be anything, but we have to build that contract early and create a world in which we can iterate however we want to iterate. So I think, in a movie, there's a recent film, Triangle of Sadness. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it.
Film.
It's, well liked. I think that it is beautiful in the way the camera moves. And I think there's one moment where we broke that contract a little too like boldly in the beginning of the film. Two characters get in the car and the camera does a 180-degree turn. And I don't know if everybody noticed it, but for me, the way the camera moved, it's like on a rotating axis, and it's been praised as like this great shot from the film. But I don't remember what happened in the scene because all I was thinking about was the camera's doing a cool thing here, right? And that film has quite a few fantastic bits of camera work and quite a few fantastic bits of production design and is abstract in many ways. But I think that we needed to do something like that a little earlier in the film so I wasn't sucked into the story by the time the cool thing happened, right? And so I think you look at, I don't know, what's a good example?
I was like I don't want to side rail your metaphor, but like I got thinking, I remember when 1917 came out, which Deacon shot, and everybody was like, it's a single shot, it's a single shot. And I was so afraid to go see that movie because I was like, if this is a movie about it just being a single shot, I'm going to be angry. And I love 1917. I thought it was so well done. And I think part of the reason it was so well done is that I had that initial 2 to 3 minutes of being like, oh, it really is a single shot. And then I forgot about it. Because they weren't too flashy about it. They did just the right amount of like, and it served the story so well. That's the thing. It's just like, that was the right script to support a movie that pretends like it's a single shot. As opposed to using that gimmick in another film where it doesn't have this element of time, it doesn't have this element of geography, it doesn't have this element of connection between these characters, it doesn't have this element of monotony to the way that the characters have to move through the space. Like, all those things are the reason why when they were looking at that script, somebody said, well, what if we did this in a single shot? And it turned out it was the right choice. But put that in another movie, and suddenly you're just thinking about the cinematography the whole movie, and you forget about the story.
Well, or in a more sort of like direct sense, is put a sequence, put one reel of 1917's shooting in the middle of something else that isn't a Warner movie, and that's going to break your contract. And I think that, like, I mean, Euphoria, which, I mean, it's a few years past, it's like, oh my gosh, time. Like that's a TV show where everybody is like, we're bought into the like collective chaos that it is. And I think Tarantino's a great example of this, is like very quickly establishing whatever world it is we're in, and very quickly saying, oh, this is the type of relationship the camera has with the scene. And then we can enjoy the scene, and we can say, oh, what a fantastic shot, because that's the world we live in, And I think that's the special thing. It's the reason music videos can be great. I'm not saying, oh, everything cool is everything bad. It's way more, are all these pieces moving in harmony in a way that's not taking the viewer out of the story in each moment? And I think that's like, that to me is both simultaneously like a lofty goal of like, oh, I never want to distract the audience from this thing, but also like day one requirement, like, it's like, how do I never destroy a scene with a shot that takes the audience out of it? And then how do I perfect the skill of blending great things into and sort of sensational shooting into a story over time?
That's fascinating.
In my career.
I love that. I love the way you put that as well. Building a contract with the audience. That's great. And
I think,
go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
I think one thing too that a lot of viewers who just are people who go and see movies and love movies might not realize is the amount of prep work that goes into this type of thing, because I think part of the way that I think that at least I saw this play out when Mitch and I were working together on Ash Woman is like we had just a lot of conversations before, for months and months before. We would be texting each other, we'd be hopping on the phone, we'd be sending each other stills. Mitch and I both put together decks of hundreds of shots from other movies that we looked through, and we went through each one and talked about what made it special and why it was working and stuff. And so you start to figure out what the movie is, months and months before you get on set. And you start to get a sense for it, and you start to have interesting realizations where it's like, oh, well, we do want blue. I remember, like, in our film, it was like, well, we do want blue light in the film, but all these stills we're looking at, weirdly, the blue light is never touching the actors. And so suddenly now we have a rule. We developed this strange understanding of, wow, it's weird that we've been gravitating towards these stills, and now we are maybe finding these reasons why. We're finding this kind of internal logic of what is making this work for us. And so then we'd be on set together, and I remember us saying this a couple times where we'd look at a frame together and we would say, that's really cool. And then we'd say, but it's not our movie. Like we'd be like, damn, like that's a cool shot. That light placed in that way is really interesting. But then we both just kind of laugh and look at each other and be like, it's not our movie. Like we can't really put it in the movie, And we get this. Yeah. It's and in so many ways I love that, because you get this lovely little moment of you just found something special. You just found the way that a light and a character works together, and it's beautiful, and you can appreciate it. But then you have to have you and the DP and everybody on set has to have the understanding, which for the most part you've built through pre-pro, of knowing that's cool, but it's not for this movie, And I think, and again, like that's, if you can't figure that out in pre-pro, then that is where I think you get a lot of messy stuff on set, where people are just trying to do whatever looks cool for them at the moment, without maybe kind of the taking 5 steps back and saying,
no sort of unified
unified kind of vision for the film. Yeah.
And I think this film is also a great example of being way closer to we need to build a contract quickly, because, we're looking at all of our reference materials are pretty out there. I mean, the film is really rooted in a Gregory Crewdson sort of lighting
he's
style.
this photographer in Vermont that both Mitch and I really love, who does this really interesting stylized kind of 1980s film homage photography that we were both obsessed with him.
Yeah. And so it's like we already had kind of this profound referential space we were working within, and we're making it our own, and we need the audience to buy into that immediately. So I think it was a special film to really work on, how do we push the boundaries, but it still remains the stories of the character, it remains the story of the script. And we're still able to evoke kind of an intimate relationship with the audience while doing this like pretty strong visual motif. And I think it's about being quick with the establishment of something interesting that you're going to do, and then being really conscious of when you change the look or the feeling in the middle of the film, what impact that's going to have on the audience and why you're doing it. And I think it was first of all, it was a really fantastic way to work with you for the first time after knowing you for, 20 years. We took it to a really interesting place really quickly. And so I think about it all the time. It was a fascinating experience, and I can't really wait to see how it fleshes out into the full form piece.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I can't wait. We're just wrapping up it's off the VFX right now. I can't wait to sit down and color with you here in a couple weeks. It's going to be fun.
Dude, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. All I've heard about is Ash Woman for so long. And it's so funny because, like what you said at the top of this conversation, Ian, it's one of those things where, listen, we're all friends with people who are filmmakers. And then every now and then someone will tell you, hey, I'm a director, I'm a writer. And you think, yeah, okay, buddy. Or like, can I share with you? Let me show you my script. And you're like, you have a read of it and you're like, fuck, that's so bad. And how do I act this up? But this is one of those instances where, because Ian shared some of the stills from Ash Woman, and you had a whole Kickstarter campaign around it and the script and all of that. And I looked at all these materials, and I was like, when I saw those stills, I went, whoa. I remember saying to Carrie Ann, she can verify this, to my partner, I was like, So Ian is the real deal. I was like, I cannot wait
Mitch
to see
thank
this.
for so much of that going on with the stills.
100%.
No.
100%.
Well, I mean, it was, but it's a collab. It's really such a collaboration. And I'll just say we have to wrap up soon. But I do want to just say this here at the end and hear your thoughts on it, Mitch. Is like one of the things that I think is really special about film, that again, people who are going to the Phoenix Cinema and watching film, they might not be thinking about this every time they see a movie, but I mean, every film set is a community. It's a group of people who get together and they just work together every day, often through very stressful circumstances, often for many days back to back. And one of the things, you and your team did an amazing job at pulling the images together, and the images were incredible. But the thing that I find myself talking more and more to people about as the time has gone past since the project is just how enjoyable it was to be on set with people who spoke respectfully to each other, with people who complimented each other on their work, with people who listened carefully. I remember there was one day, it was a really stressful day. I realized we'd scheduled the day incorrectly and we had an actress who wasn't going to be able to make it. And, I think I specifically remember finding you in the morning and being like, we're fucked. We actually can't do all of this today. And then you said, give me an hour. You said, give me an hour to talk through the whole day with everybody on my team. And you were like, it'll feel like we're wasting time, but actually we'll all get on the same page and everybody will understand what we're trying to do. And then we'll be able to do it. And you were right. We talked through it for an hour and everybody listened. And it was this really lovely hour in the morning. And we had to cut some shots and we made some decisions about stuff, but the day ended up being a really big success. I guess, speak to me just a little bit, I guess, Mitch, about some of your feelings about, and I wonder if you feel this way because of the ways that you worked up through the ranks with big crews for so long, but speak to me about the importance of just kind of the community and the relationships, on set, within a department.
Yeah, I think this is we might need more of an hour and a half podcast to really have a whole manifesto to share.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing to me, and kind of the reason I felt it was time to put the camera in my own hands, was obviously the artistic drive to do so, but also seeing an industry that had become so, I guess, craft forward labor forward and kind of gritty in a nature. And I think I took this experience of working on these big films in New York for a long time and said, I want to surround myself with people who are only there because they love what they do and because they want to be part of an industry they're proud of and a community that they're proud of. And that was really the driving quest in assembling crews for the first few features, and even my commercial experience as well, is yeah, I'm a hard boss at times and I demand a lot, but I think creating an environment where somebody can sort of stop and say, why am I here? What am I doing? Allows the film to be stronger. Everybody's invested in the story. Everybody's invested in what we're doing. And it creates this sense of calm where we can then say, okay, we're not going to do this the way that maybe everybody would expect us to. At a rehearsal at call, into the first shot in 10 minutes, we do need to pause and we need to figure out what we're going to do today. And I think that only comes from having a crew behind you that's invested in the work and really wants to hear about what we're doing next, why we're doing it. If I can have an hour to say to my gaffer on that project, Abby, and Key Grip Reese, if I can have an hour to talk to them about where we're going and why we're going there, I can then let them go be creative and find, what we want to do next, and get everybody sort of bought in on the idea of how we're going to solve a problem or how we're going to solve our day. And all the while, I think the sense of camaraderie and community you create on the set really shows on screen, and it really impacts the performances in a way that allows the director and the actors to open up and be more vulnerable, because there's a calm in invested people. There's this intangible sense of direction that's happening overall on the set that allows everybody to strip back oh my gosh, are we making lunch on time? Oh, are we doing all these things? Like, that will happen naturally if everybody is sort of moving slowly and with intention. And that creates so much space to be creative with one another that, like, isn't necessarily present on your, 48-minute TV show that's been shooting for 3 years, because that's like, oh, we got to get to this, and, lunch is at this time, and we got to turn around for Friday at this thing, and there's all this stuff happening, and there's no room to say, what if we, turned the other way and told a different story? That, I think, just giving a sense of human, or bringing a sense of humanness onto set opens the door to creativity that's much more productive than like a sense of we just got to get our shots in the can and go home. So I don't know, there's a lot more to say there, but I think to answer your question, I think that's a fairly good summation of my goals, like as a leader of a department and as a person who like only wants to serve the story at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Logistics and buy-in can equal creativity. If everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, it's
great. That's great.
And it reminds me of in closing, it like reminds me of we talked the last guest we had on was Zaylin, who runs the Phoenix Cinema, and it was so interesting to, I think, every level, because he's essentially in distribution. He's in buying films and exhibiting films, and I think that to people making films, that industry can feel so inhuman and can feel so cutthroat. And it was so lovely to have a conversation where, again, it comes back to people. It comes back to him being like, well, I found this artist and I really wanted to give them an opportunity to speak, or I understand the people who really love the Phoenix Cinema and they're like a community and I need to serve that community, and I try to talk to people after the films and I get a sense for, and it was just so cool to be like, the reason, I think the thing that sets filmmakers, people who are into film, apart from I think a lot of other art forms, is we do it because we want to share a human experience with other human beings. We don't want to sit. No, I don't know a single filmmaker who wants to sit in a studio and paint alone. You might want to do some parts of your process alone, but at the end of the day, everyone who's interested in film, I think part of why you got into film is because you wanted to be in a theater surrounded by other people experiencing art, or you wanted to be on set surrounded by other people experiencing creativity. And I think that's, anyways, it's just a lovely thing I think the more people I talk to in film, the more I realize, oh yeah, we're all kind of doing it for the same reason, which is to share share an art experience with another human being.
100%. And that extends to this podcast even existing. It's the same, by that same token, Zaylin just given us this green light. It's exactly to what you're speaking of. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we'll wrap it up now, but I'd also, just to say one last thing as well, is that we were talking about a film once in film club. I didn't even know what film it was. I don't know what the context was of what we were discussing. And it wasn't long after, Ian, you had just finished you just wrapped shooting on Ashwoman, and you were praising Mitch on that call, and I don't even think you remember doing this, but just to speak to your favor, Mitch, and it was something to do, you recalled a moment on set of Ashwoman where I think you were rolling, but something was happening behind the scenes, and Mitch was talking to the actors, and it was just speaking to how supportive, how collaborative you are, and how unified everyone was on set. I think we were obviously discussing a movie that clearly had troubles behind the scenes.
Yeah. We were watching a movie that was like, they did not have fun making this movie, and you can tell.
We had fun making Ashwoman. I think nobody can argue against that.
Did.
And I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it when it comes out. But anyway, listen, this has been great. We could have just kept going with this thing. I could do another hour, but I want to thank you for your time, Mitch, and I wish you the best of luck with all your current and future creative endeavors. You're welcome back anytime. As a matter of fact, would you like to rejoin us immediately to discuss a movie?
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's, I would love to come on again. Let me watch it real quick. And
we'll see you next week.
All right. Exactly. Let's do it. All right, folks. Well, this is it. I want to give, again, a special thanks to Mitch Perrin. Another special thanks to the Phoenix Cinema. Our music is by Stefan Krieger, and our episodes are edited by Noah Anderson. hey, if you want to come watch a movie, head to the Phoenix Cinema. Mitch will definitely not meet you there because he doesn't live in the UK. But hey, I will.